How are you doing, ladies and gentlemen? This is Isaac Dees back with another episode of the Civilem Vero Weekly Podcast, your source for civic truth in a world of post-truth nonsense. I'm here today with special guest, friend of mine and fellow conservative, Thad. Go ahead and say hi.
Hey, guys.
And we're going to be going over a couple topics today. First, we're going to talk about Trump and his reaction to Obamacare failing, or his replacement, that is. And then we're going to talk about a couple miscellaneous things. And then our most important topic of the night, which is free speech on college campuses. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. Alright, so we're starting off. Trump doubles down on House Freedom Caucus for opposing the Obamacare repeal. Boy, oh boy. Basically, I'm going to read a little bit from here. Like I said, you can see all of our sources in the description. So here's a tweet from Donald Trump, of course. Who else? If Representative Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan and I don't know how to pronounce that name would get on board, we would have both great health care and massive tax cuts and reform. This sentiment's kind of stupid, right? He also said the Freedom Caucus will hurt the entire Republican agenda if they don't get on the team and fast. We must fight them and Dems in 2018. Here's a good war strategy. It generally works. If you want to win a war, don't fight on two fronts, right? You can't fight real conservatives and Democrats and expect to win that way. In fact, you're going to lose a lot, especially on the real conservative sides. And God hope we do not lose on the Dem side. So, that being said, he doubles down on it, of course, which is going to lead to even lower approval ratings in my mind. And, of course, it's just not smart. They really saved him by saying, no, we're not going to vote for your stupid Obamacare light, right? Rand Paul coined that term. Next we move on. What else do? They said that they sent people to threaten the Freedom Caucus, right? So the Republican South Carolina Representative Mark Sanford claims that Trump threatened to back primary candidate against him in 2018 if he did not support the health care bill. He said that the president asked me, this is Mulvaney talking to him. He says, the president asked me to look you square in the eyes and say that he hoped you voted no on this bill so he could run a primary challenger against you in 2018. And Sanford added that, I've never had anyone over my time in politics put it to me as directly as that. Now that, oh my God, that's a really stupid thing to do. First of all, threatening people is going to make you look like a dictator, right? And there are enough people out there screeching, oh my God, literally Hitler. This is not a good political strategy. It does not make you look good. You should really turn around and think about your PR campaign. Of course, everyone else, there's another tweet from him. The Freedom Caucus we had already talked about this one. Basically, he's doubling down on these stinking attacks. So, what's his solution, right? You can't get the Freedom Caucus on board with their stupid bill. Maybe you should work with Democrats, right? I mean, that's what he's thinking, right? Work with Democrats. They'll help us get a health care bill passed. And Paul Ryan, who was the other architect of the Obamacare light bill, he says, no, we don't want to work with Democrats on health care. He says, I don't want this to happen, referring to Trump's offer to work with Democrats. Said carrying out these reforms, Democrats, is hardly a conservative thing. That's ironic coming from, again, the second architect of Obamacare light. Hardly a conservative thing. You could turn that around and slap it all over a 69-page piece of crap. I don't want the government running health care. Again, your bill, although it might have taken us a step further back from the single-payer system, we'd still be on the road to government-run health care. Says the government shouldn't tell you what to do and what you must do with your life, kind of like Trump going around telling people that he's going to run against them if they don't vote on his bill, right? They shouldn't do that. So this is just a whole bunch of irony. I mean, right, they had a bill that kept the pre-existing condition clause, a bunch of Medicare, cuts, and all sorts of non-conservative positions, right? And they told the House Freedom Caucus, here's this crap sandwich, I want you to eat it, and if you don't eat it, I'm going to feed you even more crap. And the House Freedom Caucus was like, nah, we don't want to eat crap because it's crap. Give me a real sandwich. And they're like, well, you're at fault, which So now they're like, well, we'll just make an even crappier sandwich with the Democrats. So I do have to give it to Paul Ryan. No, you shouldn't work with Democrats on something like this because they made this crappy Obamacare mess in the first place. But that being said, maybe if you'd made a more conservative bill, then you shouldn't have this problem, right? Then it would be in the Senate and you'd be fighting to get it there, which you really wouldn't have a problem getting it through the Senate, I don't believe. Anyway, moving on from that, I want to get some discussion here from Thad real quick. How do you feel about this Obamacare replacement and how it went?
Well, I mean, I don't think they should have gone whole hog on it. I think they should have taken steps to take these premiums down, these ungodly large premiums that are killing families right now.
Yeah.
And just work on taking that down and getting some kind of idea instead of just shoving something down someone's throat.
Right. So you feel it was pretty rushed.
Yeah, it was incredibly rushed in my opinion.
I agree with that sentiment, but it turned from a single bill overnight. It turned from a single bill to here's a 3-pronged plan is what what Ryan called it, right? Mm-hmm. They were going to pass the bill, and then President Trump was going to do some with his healthcare sector. They're going to repeal some Obama-era regulations, and then they said there's a third step, which it was a very vague. I don't want to say it was as vague as Obamacare. It wasn't like we got to pass to figure what's in the bill kind of deal.
Exactly.
But it was pretty. It was not what was promised. I don't think. I think they could have worked with establishment Republicans. They definitely could have worked a more conservative agenda into the bill. You could have, I think, and you can provide input on this, but I don't think healthcare is right, and it's hard to reasonably say that it is or is not. I think it access in the sense that you can't be denied life-saving service unless you did it to yourself, really. There's a fine line because healthcare is a life or death matter in often cases. But I think the more of the problem is how we approach healthcare in this nation. Would you say that we don't really worry about preventative care? We really just wait until you get sick and then you go to the doctor?
I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a hard question to answer because I feel like our health system is both. We provide shots to prevent certain diseases, but say an outbreak of flu or some other strain of disease comes out, we're going to work on that as well. So it's a bit of both on both areas. Right.
I do feel like though for a large part, healthcare is just sick care and less of we're going to prevent diseases. Because look at the average life of a person in today's age, right? If you look at younger kids, they don't really go to the doctors much, right? They get out and do whatever they want, and they kind of get fat, and then 2/3 of the country is overweight. Heart disease is the #1 killer of all Americans, and people only go to the hospital when problems start coming up, usually in their later years, dementia, heart problems, cancers.
Yeah.
And I think it's an individual approach to healthcare. I think the government's role is less of let's force people to go get a doctor, because, you can't force people to do anything. That's obviously, the government can because they have a monopoly on force, but they shouldn't. It's definitely the best thing we can do for healthcare is to kind of change our approach, and that would definitely help with, getting cheaper doctors, right? Mm-hmm. More preventative care options. You could have pay by the hour or monthly pay kind of things where you just go in, you get your shots, like you said, quick checkup, and they may not even have to be licensed, right? Most of that stuff. The data is out there, and I'm not saying we should just go to the black market doctor and say, "Hey, I need a kidney transplant. You got that?" And then they bust open a glass of vodka and they say, "Okay, you go to sleep now." And then you wake up with no liver. So I don't think that's the solution, but I think there's certainly an amount of, and you are seeing it, some smaller doctors and nurse practitioners, who aren't necessarily doctors, who aren't necessarily, they went through and got their PhD and all that, but they worked hard enough to where they can provide health care for, say, your average family, a couple kids and mom and dad, for a good amount of time until at least they're ready to go on their own plans and whatnot.
Yeah.
As far as the pre-existing conditions mandate, I think a good compromise with Democrats I think a good compromise with, a good compromise with the Freedom Caucus would to say, well, how about we only offer protection for people with pre-existing conditions that they can't help. Now, there's a lot out there, and a lot of them can be argued about, but let's say heart disease, lung cancer. If you come in and you have type 2 diabetes, or let's say you've come in and you've been smoking your entire life, do you think people should have access to health care, or is that just their own fault that they've essentially killed themselves, right? And the data is out there on smoking and obesity.
Yes. I mean, it's, again, that's a bit of a question right there that it really is circumstantial.
Yeah.
Like, if someone knows, like, we have the data out there that people know that cigarettes cause cancer, they're carcinogenic. Yeah. So if people continually do that and then one day they're like, oh snap, I have lung cancer now, and they're like, well, I didn't really know, or they kind of plead ignorance with that, then I, in my opinion, I don't think they should. But.
Right. Well, the whole insurance business model, and this is what really gets people about pre-existing conditions, right? The whole insurance business model is that a group of people accept the fact that we're all going to pay X amount of dollars, right? And my money might have to cover someone else getting sick, or in the case of car insurance, my money might have to cover someone else getting into a car accident. But most insurance companies won't let you. It'd be like getting into a car accident and then going to the insurance company and saying, hey, can you cover me? I mean, getting health insurance is a responsible practice fiscally.
Yeah.
Right? It's a smart thing to do, unless you have a healthcare savings account. But not everybody has the kind of money to do that, and most people don't have that kind of self-control.
Yeah.
I know I don't. I mean, I spend hundreds of dollars a month on just food alone, and I definitely shouldn't be doing that. But the point is, at the end of the day, the health insurance companies are still business. Their business model operates on people being able to, them being able to say, no, we can't cover you, you're way too high risk, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't, and I know this might sound cruel, but as a health insurance company, it would definitely be against my prerogative to cover someone who's 89 years old, smoked for their entire life, and has already had a leg cut off because they had diabetes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't think any amount of the law should force anyone to do that, right? You shouldn't force a business, because that's what it is. It's force. It's putting a gun to the business's head and saying, you will serve this person, right? If you look at governmental actions. Of course, again, we live in a society where we have laws that are compromises between people, but ultimately, it's force that motivates those companies.
Yeah.
As far as other things, like, I think the best thing in the new healthcare bill, and I don't know if it was exactly in it, but definitely the best thing Donald Trump was proposing on healthcare is opening up the borders, per se, really opening up healthcare for every state, right? If I live in Kentucky and Tennessee has a better plan, I can go to Tennessee and buy that plan, right? And that's definitely the best thing we can do.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
If only they had passed that as a separate bill before this Obamacare replacement bill had come to the floor, then maybe, and I definitely think, the House Freedom Caucus would be more willing to work at that point, because it's like, okay, this bill works, we can talk to them. I don't understand why health insurance was not allowed across state lines before this point. If someone can please enlighten me in the comments section or send me an email. I mean, you can send me an email yelling at me, how dare you, health insurance is right, we gotta save people's lives. Listen, health insurance and health care are not the same thing. You can still get care. No one's saying, no, you can't get care if you don't have insurance. There are, now in hospitals, there are specific offices called rejection offices. You go there, and if you can't afford to pay, they might have to tell you no. And that's a sucky job. It really is. I wouldn't want to do it. But they exist for a reason, because you could just use up a bed and then they can't afford to treat you, and then what? Someone else can't get in the bed, and then someone else is waiting. Obviously, the worst thing we can do is go to a single player system, like Canada, like Britain, like so many other countries, right? The way Bernie said it, every other developed country has government, or he says a single payer system, or whatever he says, government subsidized healthcare. Why are we so behind? Well, Bernie, we're not behind. We're ahead. We have much better facilities. We treat more people per year. Yes, it might be more expensive, but our healthcare system is great. If you look at failure rates, mortality rates, Wait times, especially. I mean, you had people waiting for days or hours and hours in the ER in Canada. Well, it would take less time for them to cross the border and go somewhere in the U.S. than to sit there in an emergency room in Canada. So, and if anybody wants to argue, well, socialized healthcare is just the right thing to do, we can run an episode on that. We'll take caller questions. The best kind of charity is the voluntary kind, I would say. And I think there are studies to back this up. But, what's more virtuous? Having someone else take your money and giving it to someone else, or having you take your money willingly and give it to someone else? I would say, and I think Thad agrees with me here, it's more virtuous to give your own money.
Yeah, because I believe that if you have a drive or a passion towards something, and you have some kind of heart in something, and you are giving your own money, you're going to willingly give more.
Exactly.
Because that you have passion. If you're forced to give it to something that you really don't care about, then no one's really going to give a lot. You'll give them just change in comparison to what it would be if you were giving it yourself and you had passion behind it.
I mean, look at hospitals like St. Jude. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, that's terrible, they're rolling money. No, that's great. St. Jude is doing a great job. Very important. And they don't operate off of taxpayer funds. It's private donations. Right? Mm-hmm. And they take in people who cannot afford health care, and in exchange for research, they say, hey, and not even that, they'll just take care of people. They say, hey, we'll take care of your child. And that's a great thing, right? We need more hospitals like St. Jude, frankly. And I think if the government took a huge step back, as it should do with just about everything, we would see more St. Jude's out there. So next topic we're moving on to is just a couple random articles here and there. Our university, Chattanooga, Go Mocs, just created a Lemonade Week to study Beyonce, the queen.
Yes.
Yeah. If you hate Beyonce, you're an evil person.
Yeah, you're a racist and misogynistic.
You forgot homophobic.
Yeah, homophobic.
I don't think she's gay, but you're still homophobic.
Yeah. Just anything in there.
Yeah, throw transphobic and Islamophobic.
Yeah, exactly.
So next week, this coming week, they're hosting Lemonade Week, which is celebrating Beyonce's latest album. Okay. It's like, celebrate it by buying the damn thing and listening to it,
Yeah.
And it's all about black women and equality and, women's rights. It's like, what? And I don't want to destroy Beyonce's career. I bet I guarantee you she's pretty talented. She's got more talent than I do as far as singing goes. And she's probably way prettier than I am. She's made a hell of a lot more money than I have. So I'm not saying, ooh, Beyonce sucks, I don't like Beyonce. But why? Why Beyonce? Why not someone like Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah.
Like, great feminist figure. I mean, look what she did in the UK. I mean, she led a country, maybe someone like Marie Curie. I mean, without her, we wouldn't have so many great things, of course, involving radioactivity. And we wouldn't have atom bombs and anything like that. But we wouldn't also have nuclear power, X-rays. I mean, imagine all the lives that X-rays have saved, right?
Yeah,
chemotherapy. I mean, there's so many people out there to support, right? Not Beyonce. And I think this stems from let's read some of these titles. We are all / are we all feminists? Study says no. Study says that less than, I think, 20%. 25% of women in the U.S. identify as feminists. That's because third wave feminists especially, have hijacked the word and turned it into man-hating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, I'm pretty sure women can say, they're feminists. And there are some men out there that can say, they support feministic movements. But feminism has evolved into this thing where it's become radical feminism, where you have just become man-hating. Anything, if you don't love women, and you're just a man. You're just a anti-feminist.
Yeah, exactly. It's become. I wouldn't say evolved. I'd say devolved. Right?
Yeah.
It's less about equality and more about we're better than men. Men are evil. It went from strong women who had principles and stood up for their rights to a bunch of fat lesbians who had some guy dump them in the 6th grade and now they're still crying about it. And I don't want to put all of them in the same basket, but I bet if you took, this is just me speaking here, I bet if you took a large percentage of the self-proclaimed feminists, third wave here, second and first wave, two different animals, but if you took the third wave feminists and you charted like how extreme they are and against their BMI, I'd see a definite positive trend.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't say correlation is the causation here, but I would say it's definitely related. So here's one: Lemonade the lecture. Join a number of UTC professors and students present their thoughts, reflections, and findings and responses to Beyonce's album Lemonade. Okay, I bet it's really deep. We're gonna have to pull up some of the lyrics here.
Yeah, we'll have to look this up a little bit.
Yeah, the consummate local drag artist Marie Bibi Dupree Bibi,
something like that.
Queen Bey herself. Again, are they taking this seriously? Queen Bey. I get that's what people call her, and haha,
like the Queen Bee. Yeah, it's
Queen Bee. Is that what they're saying?
I believe it's the Queen Bee.
Oh, I'm wrong here. Okay. Oh wow.
But Queen Bey, Bey as in millennial speak.
I suppose. I mean, we're millennials. But
yeah.
I don't think the glove fits. It'd be like trying to put a shoe in her hand. A night of black women writers. Again, Sojourner Truth. It's great to celebrate.
This one actually I could probably get behind is a night of black women writers. I believe that's awesome. I mean,
sure,
great. I mean,
I'm not entirely sure how they're going to spin it. Right, I think a writer should be celebrated for being a good writer, regardless of their ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
And
oh yeah,
I don't care what's between your legs if you write good stuff. Like Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, great novel.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had read it if I didn't know who Mary Shelley was, if I didn't even know the name, I wouldn't have cared who wrote it. Right. I think people turn. I think we've turned racism into less about. They've become more racist than the racists. I wouldn't say that, but they've become somewhat racist themselves in that they just judge people on their skin color. Oh, you're a black women writer? Oh, well, you must make the best stuff ever. Oh, you're a white male writer? Sorry, C.S. Lewis. Sorry, J.R.R. Tolkien. You're not too good. You oppress people. Well, no. There's this ancient. Actually, no, it's a radical idea, right? By a really smart gentleman. Can't remember his name. Oh yeah, Martin Luther King Jr. He said something like, I hope that we judge people not on the color of their skin, but the content of their character. Like, what happened to that? How about not on the color of their skin, but the content of their writing? And again, it doesn't bother me that they're black female writers.
No, not
Who
at
cares?
all. No.
Yeah. So this isn't the worst part of it. All right, here this one kills me right here. The right to move. Okay, ladies. Let's get in /formation. So this is about dancing, I guess. Does that just paint a picture of like militant feminists?
Yes, get in formation.
They're all in like SS uniforms with the sleeves cut offs.
Yeah. Right,
and little nipple holes, and they've got their armpit hair hanging out. I mean, I can't imagine something like a slower army and a less effective one.
Yeah.
A lot of different hair colors, though. It'll be like a giant gay pride parade.
Yeah.
But there'll also be some men in there. They'll probably be at the front because they're more oppressed than the actual women, the transgenders.
Yeah.
It's in the basic playbook, right? It's the left playbook. It's like, oh, looks like you're at the top of the hierarchy. Get to the front of the line. What if I don't want to be? Get to the front of the line. Talk about, and this little bit here is great, talk about an excellent waste of tuition and endowment dollars. Not only is a public university dedicating resources to celebrating a pop album, it is an album produced by a woman who paid homage to Malcolm X. Really great guy. Pretty sure he wanted to start an Islamic State. Something like that, I don't know. And the Black Panthers during the Super Bowl 50 halftime show, which I didn't really watch, but I heard it was... I remember all the memes about her looking like She-Hulk. That cracks me up.
Yeah.
And whose ardent fans threatened to commit arson when certain Grammy Awards did not get bestowed upon their queen. So I guess she is like a queen bee in that she has one thing to say and all of her mindless followers rush around like drones to do her bidding. So yeah, it's a pretty accurate name.
Yeah.
So here's one. This is an interesting thing, and ignore the leftist narrative fail here. I don't really like reading headlines all that much. I read them and I chuckle, and then I go, if I see one that's like, whoa, that was a bit much. A lot of misleading headlines, but 458 people being investigated for voter fraud in New Hampshire. Vermont is for Bernie Sanders is from Vermont. I thought he was from New Hampshire for a second. I had a little brain fart. But anybody remember when Donald Trump was like, we need to investigate voter fraud. You know, millions of illegals may have voted. And everybody's like, you're crazy, man. Now 458 people is not a big number. But it's enough to, if there's an investigation going on, there's probably something deeper going on. But let's go ahead and hop into this article. So last day on election day last year, 5,903 people voted in New Hampshire using an ID from other states, which is permitted by state law. Okay. However, the law that requires without a New Hampshire ID to produce evidence of being a domicile in the state, notes NH1. Following up on the votes cast with proof of out-of-state IDs, the New Hampshire Secretary of State sent out 6,033 letters to voters with no proof of domicile, and so far, 458 of those letters have bounced back as undeliverable. That's real comforting right there.
Yeah.
Wow. So people are saying, of course, Donald Trump jumped on this like whoosh, right, and like a panther pouncing. Like any little bit of anything that supports his narrative on Twitter, it's like
he just hops right on it.
Serious voter fraud in Virginia, New Hampshire, and California. Why isn't the media reporting on this? Serious bias, big problem! ! Classic Trumpian Twitter. But basically, he's saying, I was right, guys. Now, again, millions does not equal 458 people. But out of the 5,000, or out of the 6,000 people, 458 is a significant number. And of course, there's 764 voters who cast a ballot without satisfactory photo identification. This is why voter ID laws are important. And people try to argue voter IDs are racist. No.
Not at all.
It's not, and I understand that low-income communities might not have access to cars and driver's license, but it is very easy to go down to your local courthouse and say, I need a photo ID, and they say, okay. I mean, most people have a driver's license. Pretty simple. So maybe not a voter ID, but a photo ID law when voting. Most states don't have that. It's because people are like, oh, voter IDs are racist. No. This would definitely cut down on fraud. It would definitely cut down on everything. Also, current proof of address would be a good one. Of course, a voter ID law would help with this, but a proof of address would be good.
Yeah.
And this is what they're trying to get. But people have voted before and been dead. I mean, if you look at the Kennedys, right? JFK had a lot of dead people in Chicago vote for him. And dead people seem to always vote Democrat. But the point is, it could go both ways. I mean, what if the Republican Party had millions of dead people voting for him? I'd be outraged.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and I think it's right for us because, this is a fundamental right of our system. This is what keeps our system, our Republican government, alive. And if we have people who are cheating this most important system in the highest election in the land on a yearly basis, that's a big problem. And I think a national voter ID or photo ID law would be most necessary. And again, you can argue all day that it's racist, but it's very hard to prove that. You can argue that, say, like a literacy test is somewhat racist, right? Although literacy rates are pretty high in this country. But yeah, requiring certain people to take literacy tests, Jim Crow laws, very bad. And I think that's the big taboo behind it. Voter ID laws. They don't want another Jim Crow. Well, the real Jim Crow, it's a little different than just hey, produce your driver's license.
Yeah.
Again, most people who can vote have a driver's license. And the people who don't can most easily access at least. Because if you're committed to voting, right, if you really want to go out there and vote, do you think anything is going to stop you? Right? If I go to the poll and they say, driver's license, please. Oh, man, I really wanted to vote, but now I got to produce my driver's license. Can't reach into my wallet to get it. No, I don't think it will be that big of an issue.
No.
And I think most people are open to it, especially if we have more problems with fraud, you know. And, of course, the Washington Post followed up on a claim saying, we can't find any evidence of voter fraud in New Hampshire. I'm not, my prerogative is not to exactly believe everything the Washington Post puts out. All right, so we are moving on to one more. There's been this big buzz that Michael Flynn definitely is offering to testify for immunity in front of the congressional committee. I can't remember the name of the committee. But this story from conservativedailynews.com, originally published pretty recently, but a House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence spokesperson refuted that media reports that Michael Flynn has offered to testify in charge for immunity, or exchange, news outlets reported Thursday that Flynn offered to testify based on information in a Wall Street Journal report. Keep in mind that the Wall Street Journal said PewDiePie was a Nazi because he made a couple of Nazi jokes. And he held his hand slightly off camera so that it looked like he was giving a Sieg Heil, which is absolutely ridiculous. So, and I'm not saying every article posted by a source that has had one bad news story is not credible, but you have to begin to question people when it just looks like they're trying to make a narrative here.
Yeah.
So, here's a picture here. We are working on stories around General Michael Flynn's offer to testify to the House and Senate Intelligence Committees as well as the FBI in exchange for immunities from prosecution. We are requesting comments from all three agencies and would like to include one from Representative Nunes. This is from the editor. The reply is, the story is incorrect. Michael Flynn has not offered to testify to HPSCI in exchange for immunity, and that's from the Director of Communications. He said that the story is incorrect. And media reports also refer to a statement from Flynn's attorney as proof that he has offered to testify, but the statement says no such thing. And we can take a look at that later. Basically, there's this huge debacle, and really we just need to figure out, did he say it? Is he going to? If he did say he will testify in exchange for immunity, there's two angles we can look at here. There's something going on, and Michael Flynn wants to come out truthfully, or Michael Flynn just wants to worm his way out of some kind of prosecution. And both are equally, I know people keep screaming, Russia, 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 but if there's something there, I want to know about it. And if Donald Trump has been proven to be working with Russia, we need to get him out of here, in his own words. But, again, it's entirely possible that Michael Flynn, although he might not have said this, and currently looks like he didn't, he's just trying to weasel his way out of some kind of prosecution. And I don't typically operate on intuition, but my gut tells me that he's not a very trustworthy person, and I don't think what he would have would help anyone in an investigation, right? I think this is more, again, it could be more of him pleading the fifth here and saying, I don't want to go to jail. Which, if he did something wrong, he needs to go to jail. So next, we're moving on to a really important topic, free speech on college campuses. And I'll get some input from Thad on this one. But first, as you are definitely aware of, there were violent riots at UC Berkeley, right? And this has been this growing attitude on campuses as part of the politically correct movement to shut down unacceptable, hateful speech, which basically can be translated or boiled down to anything that a Republican or a conservative or anything that we don't agree with, right? Anything said that we don't agree with. So here's a National Review article on basically how, just absolutely horrifying it was. But, on California's oldest campus, named for one of the most important philosophers in the 18th century, Breitbart editor and right-wing provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos was invited by campus political club to make a speech about the events of the day, but this was prevented by riots. Keyword there's riots, not protests. And the violent destruction of property with explosives, fireworks, okay? I'm not going to... Fireworks explode, so they're explosives, but they're fireworks. They're not a hand grenade. They didn't throw a C4 anywhere. I hope not. I mean, I could be wrong here. Could be some fake news.
Couldn't, Molotovs be counted as explosives?
I would say so.
Okay.
If they threw Molotovs, but I don't remember them. I mean, they might have. There were a couple things on fire in the videos. By a brick-throwing mob that promised further and violence if Milo were permitted to speak, and so Yiannopoulos was prevented from giving his talk. And this is just one thing, and of course it goes on to talk about the free speech movement, and it sums it up pretty well. Berkeley deserves better, so does America. This, right, here's them holding a big old "This is war" sign, like we're actively at war. If you want a war, it's not going to be pretty, especially for your side. I mean, most liberals that I know don't own guns, and they're staunchly opposed to holding them. And most military service members I know would not fire on civilians. So if you wanted to go to war with people, you just let the people from the rural parts of California come into the cities, and they'd be more than happy to unload on some crazies. Which, I don't want a civil war. I don't think anybody reasonably wants a civil war. I think that's a pretty bad thing.
Yeah.
But if they were to have one, I think it would be over pretty quickly. So here they are. There are these riots going on, right? People are throwing bricks, setting things on fire, smashing windows, smashing ATMs. How does the police respond? They don't, right? Here's an article from Fox News. 150 rioters. They damaged about $100,000 in equipment, and only one person was arrested. The Berkeley Police Sergeant Sabrina Reich. Oh, what a last name.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Talk about fascism. Nazism is not fascism. It kind of is. There's a big difference. We can talk into that. Berkeley Police Sergeant Sabrina Reich said that officers feared increased violence and more serious injuries if the violence escalated accompanied by a heavier-handed police response. So basically, and officer safety is important. But,
very.
I mean, and you should. But to say that the violence would have been worse had we stepped in, maybe. But the fact that you're so afraid of these people that if stepping in makes it worse, that's a problem, right? That is a bad attitude for people to have. And this is not the only campus this has been occurring on. Just about every campus Milo goes to, there are protesters, right? And I don't know how you feel about Milo Yiannopoulos, but he's been getting a lot of heat from these left-wing groups, especially Antifa. They call themselves anti-fascists, but it looks like to me they're the real fascists. I mean, going and shutting down people's events, just because you don't like what they're saying, I mean, that's a very fascist tactic. You can read the history books. Right? The black shirts, Mussolini's black shirts would go and beat the shit out of people. Excuse me. They'd go and beat the crap out of people because they said fascism was stupid. And they beat the crap out of people. The Gestapo went and killed people in the middle of the night. It wasn't just Jews, right? 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust, and 6 million others, right? So, and that included, homosexuals and handicapped people, mentally and physically. But mainly, a big part of that group was political dissidents, people that Hitler didn't like. And the answer to the people not liking Hitler was to kill them, right? I mean, it wasn't unnatural for him to do that. And it's sickening and disgusting, but if this is the kind of attitude that breeds those awful people like Hitler, we can't let people speak because what they have to say is bad. And physical violence is okay if they're saying something bad. So Milo just kept going, right? And here's an example from DePaul University. They banned him after his speech was shut down. And of course, Milo was not the only speaker banned from DePaul University. Here's a article by the Daily Wire. Basically, DePaul University was threatening to arrest Ben Shapiro. And the day of the event, they just canceled it and said Ben Shapiro can't come. But they didn't cancel Christina Hoff Sommers being there because I guess she was a woman, not a Jew. No, I'm just kidding. Anti-Semitism is probably not part of it, just anti-conservatism. So I'm going to pull up this video and we're going to watch it real quick. Basically, they got out of their car here, and DePaul University's. This is from the foundation that hosts Ben Shapiro most commonly. There he is in the black tank. I'm going to shut up for you guys to listen. This exchange is pretty humorous. I think you'll like it.
How's it going, fellas? Hey, man. How are you?
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
And don't let us in because...
Well, you may not be the only one, sir.
And look at all the protesters there.
Appreciate it. Good to see y'all. Hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
You RSVP?
Well, the group certainly knows I'm coming. I RSVP'd with as somebody listening in the audience. I RSVP'd as a speaker, and I RSVP'd as security. So if you have any other standards of RSVP that are necessary, I'm happy to fulfill those.
Pause. That man is wearing 2 Trump hats. Right behind Ben Shapiro, right there.
Fantastic.
Fantastic, dude. Dedication, right?
Yeah.
Not only is his head nice and toasty, but his head is nice and free. Sorry to interrupt there. I just had to point that out.
Give us 1 second.
Sure.
I don't want to confront him, so...
He'll help you out.
I'll shoot the police.
Can I help you out? Okay.
Alrighty. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How you doing?
Yeah, doing okay.
A little chilly, but
Right,
still
you
good.
can see Ben is
Seems
not
like a
really-
lot of security for no protesters.
I'm not
Pretty
security.
for our event.
Got it.
So many cameras right now.
Let him speak.
Ben, you're the
How are you,
man.
sir?
Free country.
Let's
Sure.
see.
Oh,
This is free country.
how are you?
I'm the head of public safety.
Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. You know that you weren't registered, whatever, for the group didn't register you for the event. They have strict things,
Welcome to
so
Soviet
you're
Union.
not allowed, into the event.
Well, I mean, YAF did inform you that I was coming as a speaker, as a person sitting in the audience, as well as a member of Christina Hoff Summers' team. So I'm not sure what other standards are necessary. I'm also wondering exactly why it's so necessary to keep me personally out.
We're just following protocol, sir.
Well, why is there protocol to keep me specifically out?
What country protocol? Soviet Union or United States?
You want to step over here to the side?
Well, I'm happy to do it right here if you'd like. I mean, I don't think this needs to be private.
The bottom line is it's private property, okay?
I'm
It
fully
wasn't
aware.
proper procedures weren't followed, and you're not going to be allowed to.
So am I to understand that if I take 3 steps forward, you will attempt to have me arrested?
If you create a problem and you will not, leave the campus, yes.
Okay, so just to be clear, if I attempt to enter that hall right there and sit down just to listen to somebody speak, or if I attempt to ask a question or to engage in free speech, you will have me arrested.
At this point, yes, sir.
Okay, then I'm glad that we've clarified that situation. I'm also glad that in a city, I mean, clearly you have great security. I'm glad in a city that has some 4,000 shootings to this date, you have 30 members of security just for a 5'9", 165 Jewish guy. I think this is maybe a mild allocation of resources. Well, okay. Well, if that's the way we're going to do this, then we'll just do the events elsewhere, folks. So follow us.
So to sum it up, basically, you heard him say it, so you're going to arrest me if I take 3 steps forward and try to participate in my free speech. Yes. That's absolutely ridiculous. Yes, DePaul is a free campus. Yes, they still had the event. Yes, they went somewhere else, but still, we threatened to arrest somebody because we don't like what they have to say and we don't want them to be there. So, I want your take on this, Thad. Do you think Ben was being violent or rude?
Not at all. I think he did it very well. He was very calm. He made sure that he made his intentions very clear that he wanted to talk there and wanted a very clear and concise ultimatum that if he were to walk forward 3 steps, they would arrest him for trying to express his free speech.
Right, yeah. And this is not the only campus that has banned such speakers, right? I mean, you look at, and they did the same thing to Milo, and right, they were concerned about protesters, but in the video there are no protesters, right? And nobody did any damage, because, again, I don't know how you feel about Milo, but Ben is certainly much more mild than Milo.
Yeah.
I mean, his insults might be a little more clever, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
And he definitely regards the left with... I mean, I don't know who's more vicious to him, to be honest. The point is, Ben is not as controversial as Milo. I don't think so.
No.
If anybody, De Souza would be banned on campuses, and he's probably had that treatment. But this reflects a growing attitude on campuses. And I've talked about this, let's ban people who, violate, the groupthink. Let's get rid of people for thought crimes, right? This is a very Orwellian attitude. And most people on campuses, you ask them what a conservative is, and they're like, I don't know, some kind of Nazi, which is a terrible attitude towards it. At least be willing to listen to the other side of the argument. And, I rail on the left a lot, but I'll talk to just about any leftist. I'll talk to them. I'll talk to them and debate with them. And I enjoy it, right? I mean, I might not enjoy it if they're just shouting in my face, right? That's not a very good dialogue, but there's still a dialogue happening to a degree. So that's what's happening on campus. Now, Berkeley had not seen all of the violence there. There was a pro-Trump march, and a big meme came out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You're aware of it.
Very huge, yeah.
Based Stickman or the alt-night, which I prefer alt-night. I know it says alt-right. I know it's talking about, but I think that's just more clever, right? Basically, there's violence at a pro-Trump rally, and Antifa comes up and they're saying, there's a pro-Trump rally and Antifa come in, as they normally do, and clad in black communist gear, right, coming to fight, and they use pepper spray and all that. And
my biggest thing with the Antifa is, or however you pronounce it, is most of them tend to wear something over their face.
Right.
If you're wearing something over your face in the intention of doing something that you know is probably not right, that group is not good.
I would say so, yeah.
That is ridiculous. That they, the way they dress and the way how they're always looking to get violent at these usually peaceful rallies is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. And of course he became basically a man came clad in a gas mask and a helmet, and he had a shield. And you'll see him in this next video. But he came in and he just started bashing people with a stick, and he was arrested. However, he was freed later, and all charges were dropped. But he had this huge legal fund. So, speaking of memes, here he is, and you guys might recognize this from the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim trailer. And I think Skyrim is a beloved game. But
there's one they fear.
Sorry
In
about
their
the
tongue
kid.
is Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
But you can see, it's just massive crowds. You can. There's a stark difference between the Antifa people and the Trump marchers, right? Big American flags, right?
Yeah.
Patriotism. But yeah, there's a lot of violence. And obviously, it's concerning, right? Because this keeps escalating. We'll have some problems. So, another thing related to UTC, this is kind of free speech, kind of not. We can talk about this. But basically, and we'll cover this, this report from the Times Free Press is talking about a reporter who, Jackie Helbert, reported and produced a story for WUTC. She followed a group of Cleveland high school students as they traveled to the state capitol March 7th to meet with Senator Mike Bell, from Riceville, and Representative Kevin Brooks, a Republican from Cleveland, about a transgender bathroom bill. And I believe the bill was legally requiring people to use the bathroom of their preferred, or the gender they were born with, right? So if you're born with a dingus, you went to the guy's bathroom, and if you had a vagina, you go to the girl's bathroom. Right, that was the bill. I don't think the bill made it through committee or wasn't passed, but they said they're going to try again. Anyway, it said it failed to make it out of the Senate Education Committee. The students were advocating against it, and this person right here, now there are pictures. Our campus newspaper also had a similar article, but basically, this reporter showed up and said, she's part of NPR, WUTC is, and she said she interviewed the senators and made a story. Now, the senators saw this story and said that she did not identify herself as press, which NPR's public policy is that you have to identify yourself as press. However, in defense of this reporter, she had her equipment with her and a press badge, but she did not explicitly say, "Hey, I'm with NPR, WUTC. Can I get your thoughts on this?" So, NPR technically violated this, but UTC's response after the senators called them and said, "Hey, violated policy." They fired this reporter, right? And there's a big hubbub on campus. There was a protest about it. They had a big coffin that said, free
speech on a coffin,
Yeah.
symbolizing death of free speech.
Which I think for the NPR basically said it wasn't a fireable offense, right? Essentially, and you can read it in this article up here. But not being a fireable offense, I think this was a political move because soon UTC will have to talk to these senators to get funding, and I think as far as free press goes. On free speech on campus, they should not have fired this reporter. They could have given them a warning, said, "Hey, identify yourself as press next time." But to say you're fired, right out the gate, it's kind of ridiculous. And I think the protest is somewhat justified. I think sites like shameonutc.com are not justified because they're completely biased. And I think we should definitely talk about this. Now, I do believe sources are saying that this reporter is now suing UTC for $1 million. Of course, that $1 million won't unfortunately go to Lemonade Week. Oh God!
Oh man!
Oh
that's
man! That's
gonna,
a shame.
Yeah, that's gonna pull at my heartstrings.
Yeah, we've got to support the Queen Bee.
Yep. No,
Right.
that could have really made a huge difference.
But what's your angle on this? Do you think it was right or wrong for UTC to fire them?
I think it was absolutely wrong. I think what you said, giving them a warning, giving them at least a chance. Like, I mean, these are students. They're learning stuff. Like,
Right.
I mean, unless they've been doing this their entire life, it's not really like, this isn't a big job for them. They're trying to learn the tricks of the trade.
Right.
And obviously, to her knowledge or not, she didn't follow one of the rules and she got fired. I don't think that's the correct response whatsoever.
Right.
It should have been left at a warning, or not even a warning. Maybe like they should have just at least like contacted. I don't think. I can understand that people being mad the place that it happened and then them calling UTC, but UTC should not have had such a big blow up about it.
Right. I definitely now. I wouldn't say they were a learning reporter. This person's 32 years old.
Okay.
So they're a middle-aged adult. I know this picture doesn't look like it. I mean, I don't want to make personal comments here. An ad hominem attack wouldn't help anybody in this situation. But I do agree that it was a little hasty, but to play devil's advocate, the university needs money, and this is going to make the university look bad to the senators. So it might not be ethical in anything, but the university does have the right to employ or fire for whatever reason. Right? Tennessee is a right to work state. It's also a right for employers to fire you for whatever, which is totally okay with me. I don't think a business should be forced to fire or hire people based on anything but what they determine. Except for with some exceptions, right? But basically, this story was pretty, after being edited a few times, it was still pretty inflammatory towards the senators, and I think the senator had a right to complain, I would say. Mm-hmm. I think, I remember the senator saying something like, I don't know, the remarks were quote-unquote inflammatory. Now, I think I think this got as much attention as it did because it was about the transgender bathroom bill. Right. It's a complete shame that it takes something like a transgender bathroom bill to get people up in arms about the freedom of the press. Right. Especially on campus where we need it most. But I think we're on the same page here when I say they shouldn't have fired her.
No, not at all.
But I think protesters should ease it back. And actually my organization, Students for Free Expression, will be hosting a guest speaker to talk about this event on Thursday, April 6th. And I'll see how they feel about it. But, again, like I said, we're going to talk about this, and this is going to keep going on campus, right? We're going to look at more into this for you guys. So I'm going to wrap this up here with a quick reading, and I say quick with air quotes around it, a quick reading on my open letter and my organization's open letter to the chancellor of our university, on free expression on campus. And Thad, if you have anything to talk about before we do that, go ahead.
No, I think I'm good. Yeah.
Still on the Trump train?
Yep, very much
Still
so.
pretty hard. I don't know. I'm kind of slipping here. If he keeps attacking real conservatives, I'm going to have a real problem with him. And I think his polls will show that. But that being said, we're going to move on here. So let's go ahead. And let's go pull this up here. All right. So this is an open letter to Stephen Engel, the Chancellor of University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Dear Dr. Engel, I'm writing this letter to warn you of a growing danger on college campuses. This danger is a growing movement to suppress the constitutional rights of students and staff in the name of political correctness. Other college campuses have witnessed active suppressions by instructors and administration. In addition to efforts by campus officials to suppress student rights, certain violent groups have incited riots in order to prevent speech that they deem as unacceptable. And these violent mobs were neither prevented nor stopped in progress by campus security forces. In this letter, I will not only provide specific examples of the suppression of free expression, but I will justify the need for an open marketplace of ideas and recommend a solution to this growing storm. To begin, it is important to discuss exactly why free speech is necessary in an academic setting. The Constitution is clear. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. The question is whether UTC is required to abide by these protections. This university is a public university to which state and federal funds are granted. Therefore, a university that is open and funded in part by the public must protect the constitutional rights of every American who is part of it. If a university does not respect the rights of students, the state or federal government would be justified in a consideration to pull funding from that college. In addition to the legal duty UTC must fulfill, our campus and students benefit most from an open exchange of ideas. Josie Timms states the following in an article for the Index on Censorship. Freedom of expression is a fundamental human right, and it reinforces all other human rights, allowing society to develop and progress. The ability to express our opinion and speak freely is essential to bring about change in society. Free expression and assembly allowed our society to progress from injustice to many of the freedoms that we now enjoy. The foundings of this nation used their rights to gather support for the cause of a nation free of tyranny. Millions of women spoke loudly in the fight to gain the ability to vote in the women's suffrage movement. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and his followers used their rights to bravely stand up to the tyranny of racist state governments and won one of the most important victories for every citizen in this nation. The environment in this nation and the freedoms we now enjoy are due most fundamentally to the first rights our founders wrote into law and the brave individuals who bore the torch of liberty forward. Even in its great utility and importance, there are those groups among us on campus who do not support this most important freedom. Indeed, some campus administrations seek to remove rights from students. For example, Patrick Gary wrote in the National Forum, dozens of universities have introduced tough new codes prohibiting speech that leads to, among other things, a demeaning atmosphere. The University of Michigan, for instance, enacted a code that punishes any speech that stigmatizes or victimizes an individual on the basis of any one of 12 criteria. Such vague policies that set out to ban words and even ideas from being discussed pose a direct and explicit threat to the freedom of speech. This example is just one of many university policies that set out to erode the central freedom of our republic. In addition to speech codes, some administrations place ridiculous security fees on specific speakers and groups. According to an article on campusreform.org, the Cornell Republicans were forced to pay $5,000 to host Rick Santorum, who was still met with hecklers, whereas the president of the Democrat group on campus stated in the same article that their organization paid no such fees. These obviously discriminatory policies on campus must not be implemented unless they are made for more specific purposes and are more equitable. Campuses have gone so far as to ban certain speakers on the very night of their event. Such is the case for noted conservative speaker Ben Shapiro at DePaul University. According to the Daily Wire, Mr. Shapiro was threatened with arrest even if if he even attempted to set foot inside the hall where he was speaking. DePaul University is a private campus, but the administration has done an incredible disservice to its students by not allowing the free trade of ideas in a place of learning. Even instructors have sought to end free discussion. The Daily Caller reports that a student was suspended for disputing a false claim by a professor. The professor stated that the Christian Bible does not state that Jesus was crucified, nor did it state that his disciples believed he was God. The student of Rollins College disagreed and was suspended because the professor felt unsafe. Stating a position on an issue is not violence, and a demonstrably false claim should be disputed. This suspension was both unfair and ridiculous, and both the professor and administration should be held accountable for this violation of student rights. The above examples are just a small part of a growing tyranny among campus administrations. In addition to a growing distaste of free expression among campus administrators, certain groups and political organizations have resorted to violence in order to stop dissenters from expressing their opinions. National Review reports that Milo Yiannopoulos had scheduled an event to speak at the University of California, Berkeley, and the known right-wing firebrand was met with protests that quickly became riots. Rioters threw bricks, fireworks. They started fires, vandalized businesses, and harmed innocent individuals participating in the event. Why did this happen? The answer is simple. The rioters disagreed with and demonized both Milo and his supporters. This political violence is a direct threat to the free society in which we live in. The agitators might argue that Milo was spreading hate speech. However, the American Civil Liberties Union notes that on its website, speech that could be viewed as hateful is still protected by the Constitution, and the fighting words precedent had not been used to block speech in court in over 50 years. Therefore, rioters' violence was in no way justified by the law. However, rioters remained for a significant amount of time, and damage was done with little intervention by campus security. The rioters' use of political violence to intimidate right-wing groups is by definition terrorism, and UC Berkeley failed to respond accordingly. The events at UC Berkeley were a frightening display of true totalitarianism, and UCC should not follow the same path. Furthermore, college campuses must protect the freedom of speech and end violence riots to prevent the breakdown of society itself. Once more, Berkeley was a center of political violence during a pro-Trump march, as reported by independent journalist Stephen Crowder. This time, both sides fought against each other, resulting in multiple arrests. Members of the left-wing group, anti-fascists, began to provoke the peaceful demonstration with pepper spray and other weapons. And some Trump supporters responded in full force. If not for the police, the violence could have escalated. Anti-fascists were likely emboldened by the previous riots at UC Berkeley and decided to disrupt the peace. If colleges continue to breed an anti-free speech attitude, violence could escalate from whole cities fighting each other to states and ultimately civil war. Neither side would be able to negotiate properly without free speech, and our free society would crumble. Therefore, college campuses like UTC must encourage the free and peaceful exchange of beliefs. In conclusion, the university has a responsibility to protect free speech, and many universities across this nation are failing in that regard. We must not allow this attitude to grow on our campus, for our sake and the sake of our nation. I implore you to review campus policies and create new policies that will protect our most vital freedom as citizens. Sincerely, Isaac Dees, President of Students for Free Expression. And that's about it for that letter. What's your angle on this, Dad?
I think that was powerful words right there. I think that hits all the points that need to be talked about. I think it really is a shocker to like UTC's security system, and I think that it definitely needed to be said.
Do you think we'll send anybody to safe spaces with that?
I don't really think so. I don't think anybody can really think that can be considered as like against anything. I think everyone really understands that this is what is needed.
Yeah, I think with a little bit of persuasion, I think most people would be able to see that.
Yeah, I mean, under the circumstances, I don't think anybody's going to really look at this and think this is hate speech. I think this is more, everyone really understands that they should be able to, like,
speak freely.
Speak freely, yeah.
Now, I have had in classes people argue with me that there should be, blocking racists. And I say, let the racists speak. The worst they can do is make themselves sound stupid and hurt someone's feelings.
True to that. I mean, but I think that and there are going to be people that are going to be like, well, if your words or anything you say is against my views, I don't want to hear it, or it's hate speech, or yada yada yada.
Well, I mean, do what the kids do and plug your ears.
Yeah.
La la la, I can't hear you.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, I guess people. I don't think in this instance, in this letter, I don't think.
No, I don't think anybody. I think our campus is pretty mild as far as. I mean, we did just have that huge demonstration about, or not huge. It was a pretty big demonstration about freedom of the press.
Yeah.
So I think most people will be able to get behind this, but this needs to happen on more campuses, and I encourage anyone to go out on their campus and speak freely. I mean, even if you don't like the guy, wear a Trump hat. See how people react. If your professor tells you to take it off, ask him why. And maybe not wear a Trump hat, but you can wear. Maybe let's make a taxation is theft hat. Can we do that?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's already out there.
What? You know what? We need to look this up.
Yeah.
Taxation is theft hat. Dang it.
Beat you to the punch.
Oh man, someone made a make taxation theft again hat. That's a pretty good one. Here's there's beanies and everything. Yeah, that's pretty true. But yeah, I think this is an important cause. So I encourage everyone to, open dialogue about it. Are you really free to speak in your places? Maybe not in your workplace, but in your homes and your families, especially on universities. This is the place where young people are learning. I mean, a lot of kids go to college. A lot of them drop out, but a lot of kids go to college, right? And these are the people who are supposed to be leading the intellectual discussion in our nation. And obviously, it's not a very open one. So, that being said, thank you for listening to Civilem Vero. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, rate, comment, and subscribe. And next week, we'll come back with our weekly time, 6 p.m. Eastern, Saturdays. Thanks for listening.